Hello, everyone. This is me saying Requiescat in Pace to Jonathan Sacks, the erstwhile chief rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth, or in short form, he was chief rabbi of the UK, but supposedly of all Jewish communities throughout the Commonwealth. But even within the United Kingdom, quite a few Jewish communities didn't accept him as their supremo. So he was born in London, 1948, in Lambeth, curiously, which is just south of the River Thames. And the Judaic community in London almost entirely lives north of the River Thames, actually quite far north these days. I don't know much about his family background, actually, but Sachs, that surname, is not just the item, as in the man going to St. Ives, but I think Saxony in Germany. Of course, in German, we Sachs, we spell Sachs. So I don't know how long his family had been in the United Kingdom, because obviously the Judaic community was booted out under Edward I in 1290, not officially allowed back until Cromwell in 1656. So he's born shortly before the 300th anniversary of the readmission of Jewish people. But he was very academically gifted. He went to Christ's College in Finchley, which is a Christian school. Well, there's a giveaway in the name Christ's. But later on, he was a staunch advocate of the Jewish community having their own schools, state schools or private schools. State in the United Kingdom means publicly funded. Anyway, so he went on to Cambridge University. I forget which college, reading philosophy, got a first-class degree in that, and was at Oxford, New College, doing, I thought, a master's degree, I don't remember, and later he was ordained as a rabbi. He met Rabbi Schneerson, that renowned rabbi from Eastern Europe who somehow survived the Holocaust, and he was really a doyen of the ultra-Orthodox, and some people thought he would be the Messiah. He died in the early 90s. He's from a long rabbinic dynasty. And so Schneerson was deeply impressed with Jonathan Sacks and pleaded with him to enter the rabbinate, which he duly did. Or do you pronounce it rabbinate? I don't know. I'm a goy myself. So and then he was in charge of some synagogue in North London. I can't remember which one. So he married youngish. He had 3 children. Quite a modest brood for a rabbi. Normally an Orthodox rabbi would be more fecund than that. So he was staunchly Orthodox. He wasn't a Haredi or Lubavitch or one of those. But no, you must keep kosher. And yes, he did wear a beard, and obviously he wore his yarmulke at all times. And he believed people must marry within Judaism. He said the trouble about mixed faith marriages is they pretty soon become no faith marriages. He published a book on the subject in 1994, Will We Have Jewish Grandchildren? Because about half of all British Jews marry out of the community, and these children are brought up who've got one Jewish parent are often not really brought up in Judaism, sometimes not at all. And if they marry out again, the child's only a quarter Jewish. And I know that the child might be halakhically Jewish if it's the mother's mother, but even so, they might feel minimal connection to the Jewish community or the faith and all the rest of it. So, the world Jewish community could have easily recovered from the Holocaust a long time ago if people weren't doing this. So he was a man of controversial views, and he wasn't afraid to express them. He denounced Rabbi Hugo Grin in a private letter, who was a liberal rabbi who'd survived Auschwitz, saying that he was a destroyer of the faith. Apparently it was written in Hebrew, and that was meant to be a private letter, but that correspondence was then leaked to the media and published, caused a furore in the Jewish community in the mid-90s. So some liberal and reform Jews were appalled by his behavior, thought he was mean-spirited, and that it was Sacks was the divisive one, not Hugo Grin, who died quite a few years ago. So now I might be getting a mix up with Lord Jakobovits, who was chief rabbi before him, who said if you found out that a fetus was gay, for sure you should abort that fetus, despite that chief rabbi believing that abortion was otherwise a moral abomination unless it was to save the woman's life. But I may be doing an injustice. Maybe it wasn't Sacks, maybe it was Jakobovits, who retired in 91 and died in 99, because Chief Rabbi Sacks, he became Chief Rabbi in 1981, and he retired quite some time ago, 10 years ago, possibly more. I once attended a talk by him in Oxford, and I can tell he was a fabulously animated public speaker, strutting up and down the stage, because the religious tradition I was brought up in is Catholicism, and I'm afraid to say the Catholic clergy often miss lesson 1 of public speaking, and they're not remotely lively, and they just talk to their toes in a monotone is just earth-shatteringly dull, just so bland, uninspiring. But he was different. He had a bit of showbiz pizzazz about him. So he was engaging, and it wasn't just too academic or distant. And he would leaven it with a few anecdotes and accents and things like that. So he certainly had some stagecraft to him. So no wonder so many Jewish people are gifted in terms of theatricality when they've learned some of the tricks of the trade from their rabbis. And Chief Rabbi Sachs, he was also against gay civil partnerships, not just against marriage, civil partnerships, presumably for that was opening the door to same-sex marriage, which he felt was unacceptable. So he was quite an old-fashioned sort of person in that respect, but I think certainly the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, they definitely agree with that. Orthodox is more sort of mainstream Orthodox, broadly agree with it. Liberal and Reform Judaism is different, and there are gay married rabbis in the United Kingdom. David Mitchell would be an example, someone I knew quite well. So there are other things he said which I thought were a bit flippant. One time it was at some football match. Now, the team that the Jewish community in the United Kingdom often supports is Tottenham Hotspur, Spurs, and that's why their chant was even Yid Army, which is surprising because Yid is an opprobrious term for a Jewish person. You think that, what an appalling slur. But anyway, whether Jewish or not, their fans would say they're the Yid Army. And some of their opponents, I can't remember their rivals is Arsenal. A few of the Arsenal fans, I'm not suggesting the most that did this, used to taunt them in the most shocking fashion, making this sort of noise, tss, as meant to be the noise of gas being released into a gas chamber. Wow. Because some of these people really were related to those who'd been murdered in that manner. So at some match, the chief rabbi, and I can't remember, was it the Archbishop of Canterbury, they prayed for their team to win, but Tottenham Hotspur lost. And I can't remember which journalist said, well, if the Archbishop and the Chief Rabbi praying for this team to win still doesn't guarantee a win, then obviously there's no God. And the Chief Rabbi wrote back, said, no, it doesn't. On the contrary, it proves there is a God, just he supports the other team. Which I know it's droll, but I thought, doesn't that belittle your religion? Are you lowering yourself to engage in this kind of banter about something which is sacred according to you? So anyway, he was ennobled. He was made a peer of the realm. He didn't take sides in politics. He did obviously speak out about issues which are particularly relevant to the Jewish community. And he spoke up for Israel as well, and not all Jewish people identify with Israel. So far as I know, he wasn't an Israeli citizen, but he did visit Israel on numerous occasions. I recall him talking about his holidays in Israel, when the only time I ever went to a speech by him. So believing the state of Israel is part of Jewish identity, and give his imprimatur to certain schools like the Emmanuel College in North London, which he thought was fabulous. And that many attempts to criticize Israel were misguided and distasteful. That was the phrase he used. And so he was made Lord Sachs when he retired, a crossbencher in the House of Peers. I remember once going to the Remembrance Day service at the Cenotaph, and he was there in his rabbinic regalia to represent the Jewish community. 2005, the Holocaust Memorial Day, when he was speaking in Westminster Hall at the official commemorations. But he was not afraid of expressing contentious views. For instance, when it came to the liberation of Iraq in 2003, he was the only religious leader in the United Kingdom to voice fulsome support for the military effort. But anyway, he was neutral. He wasn't speaking out in favour of the Conservative Party. His predecessor, Lord Jakubowicz, was perceived by some as being too close to the Thatcher administration, although he didn't explicitly give his backing to the Conservative Party. So I bumped into Lord Sachs summer 2019, about June 2019 in St John's Wood, just by chance. And I think it must have been the Shabbat, when he was hurrying to the synagogue, and I said, "Good afternoon, Rabbi," and he acknowledged me. That was it. So he's sorely missed. He's dead at the age of 72, died of cancer, which he'd previously managed to beat off. Anyway, he made a fabulous contribution to his community. I know he wasn't everybody's cup of char. He wasn't as hardline as some. Even attending Rabbi Grin's funeral led to some backbiting amongst the ultra-Orthodox. That is Jakubowicz, and his successor. We don't hear about him quite so much. All right, toodaloo.